Hello and welcome to the morning sports briefing here on Wednesday, the 8th of July. And I've managed to get my co-host to stop playing sports quizzes as they had as we were doing pre-show. Yes, we'll get on to news, not quizzes this morning. Another Blues star, another Blues rising star even, extends contract. Test cricket is back. Warriors team named, more NRL players in hot water. Fernando Alonso back as well, and basketball upsets. So yes, lots and lots of sports news this morning. And before we get into it, I'll just remind you, this is your best way to start the day, up to date with all the important sports news. Don't forget, you can listen to us on the go. Just download New Zealand Sports Radio into your favourite podcatcher, be that iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or Acast. Moving on to football news, and Tottenham Hotspur saw off Everton 1-0 in the EPL. Also, Crystal Palace lost to Chelsea 2-3, and that new 3 sponsorship for Chelsea works out this time now. That mobile phone company that sponsors them and has a big 3 on the front of their jersey. At least they scored 3 this time rather than letting 3 in. And Watford beat Norwich 2-1. Now that is a big result down the bottom end of the table, because that means that Watford now have a 4-point gap over Aston Villa, who Watford in 17th, the last place that doesn't get relegated. Aston Villa in 18th. So that 4-point gap is a big gap at this stage. Aston Villa and Bournemouth both have a game to play, but boy, oh boy, they need to win their next games. I'm now going to hand you over to Ashwin, who's going to take us through our cricket update and not answer sports quiz questions.
Oh, no, but it was James Lowe. Anyway, this is good morning, Paul, and good morning to all our listeners and viewers out there on the interweb. Yes, Test cricket is back in less than 24 hours after 115 days after England abandoned their final warm-up match in Sri Lanka, and before legging it to beat border closures back home. England will again, with West Indies, grace a cricket field. Yesterday, Ben Stokes donned the captain's blazer for the obligatory photo shoot. And today, along with Jason Holder, they will walk their sides out onto the GS Bowl field. It appears like the West Indies will also be naming their playing 11 at the toss along with England, who were supposed to name their side overnight. Brian Lara believes if the West Indies are to win the first test, they'll need to do it within 4 days, as they'll run out of puff by the time the 5th day rolls around. Meanwhile, Jason Holder has a point to prove. He doesn't believe he's been getting the credit that he deserves. After all, he is the ICC top-ranked Test all-rounder ahead of Ben Stokes, his opposing captain. And so he probably has a fair point and want to go out there and prove it. Let's remember, in the last Test series that they played together, Jason Holder knocked up a double 100 against his much-vaunted opposition and opposition captain. So finally, all the talk stops. They won't be talking about who's sick. They won't be talking about who's failed a COVID test. The play will begin, and that will start overnight New Zealand time, and we'll bring you all the scores tomorrow morning right here on the morning sports briefing here on New Zealand Sport Radio. And Paul, that is the cricket news for today.
Thank you very much, Ashwin. And they will only not be talking about it if a player doesn't test positive or doesn't sneeze in the outfield. Just wait for that first player sneezing in the outfield, and hey presto, it'll be big news. Yes, into the corner of the elbow, folks, not the hands, especially as the ball is a vector for the disease, as we all know.
I love that term, a vector for the disease. It's a great term.
Or the English Prime Minister has told us. Stephen Harris, good morning, sir, and please do take us through the birthdays.
Yes, thank you very much, Paul. No quizzes here this morning, but it is a wet, wild, windy day in Auckland. I know if you're on the school holidays, take care wherever you are throughout the country. In fact, wherever you are throughout the world, if you're viewing from overseas. And I know we do have a regular Hugh that tunes in every morning from across the ditch. So good morning to you, Hugh. And birthdays this morning, a former All Black and a Wales rugby international with a little bit of NRL thrown in. A former Tasman and Chiefs flyer, now available for Ireland. And I've got to give Ashwin big points for getting both of those right. And finally, a former bronze medalist at the Beijing Summer Olympics. Jesse Sargent, born this day, the 8th of July, 1988, is a retired New Zealand racing cyclist who rode professionally between 211 and 216 for Team Radio Shack Trek Factory Racing and AG2R Le Mondial. Born in Fielding, Sargent won the bronze medal at the 2008 Summer Olympics in Beijing as part of the New Zealand team pursuit, together with Sam Booley, Hayden Ralston, Wesley Goff, and Mark Ryan. Moving right along, James Lowe, born this day, the 8th of July, 1992, is a New Zealand rugby union player who currently plays at Leinster. Lowe represented New Zealand schools in 2010 and was part of the successful side which defeated Australia of Māori descent. He affiliates to Ngāpuhi and Ngā Te Rangi Iwi. He gained selection for New Zealand Māori in 2014 and 2016. Injury prevented him from appearing for the Māori in 2015, but he made the squad again for the 2016 end of tour. Excuse me, beg your pardon. It's again for the end of the Rugby Union International, scoring 5 tries in 3 appearances against United States, Munster and Harlequins. Lowe will be eligible to play for Ireland from the end of 2020, and that's due to a residency rule. So we might see him there in the end of the year. Speaking of residency, Shane Howarth, born this day, the 8th of July, 1968, is a former international rugby union player who gained 4 caps and scored 54 points for the All Blacks before later switching his allegiance to Wales, attaining 19 Welsh caps. And outside half or fullback, he was a prolific goal kicker and a fast, elusive runner. He scored 23 points for Wales, including a try in a famous 32-31 victory over England, and that was played at Wembley when the Millennium Stadium was under construction in Cardiff. In 1996, he switched to rugby league, signing with the North Queensland Cowboys in the NRL competition. He played 12 games for the club and scored 49 points, including 3 field goals. However, he was not re-signed by the club and instead returned to rugby union, playing 3 games for the Blues during the 97 Super 12 season. So he would have picked up a Super Rugby medal in 1997. Boy, have things changed, guys, in terms of guys switching allegiances. It definitely won't happen these days. That's birthdays. I'll be back shortly with rugby league news.
Thank you very much, Stephen. And don't forget, folks, that you're listening to New Zealand Sports Radio at 2 p.m. today. We have a new long talk for you, this time with the CEO of ParaFed Auckland. Talking about accessibility sports. So do join me for that chat. It's a fantastic one with Jan Rue. Moving on to rugby union news. Yes, the Blues have another rising start who've extended to 2022. Yesterday, we told you about Hoskins Satutu, who had extended his contract, and now Mark Talia has also done that as well. 2 of the rising stars in Super Rugby or this season. Mark Talia had scored 5 tries in 7 games before the breakdown. Before the breakdown? No, before the lockdown in Super Rugby, and it has been and has been threatening since then as well. So definitely an up and coming young player, and good to see him be extended at the Blues. This is his first full season, fully contracted season in Super Rugby. I'm now going to hand you back to Stephen, who will take us through our NRL updates. You remember, that's the sport that just keeps on giving.
Yeah, it is, and it's still giving once again. Good morning, everybody. And our league news this morning: the Warriors have named their team for their first for round 9 clash this weekend, and Fornua Blake, who was in trouble yesterday with Manly and a few off the field incidents or on field incidents, is in even more trouble. But it's with the Warriors. We start this morning. The Warriors have named their team for Friday night's round 9 clash against the Gold Coast Titans at Cyber Stadium in the Gold Coast. Fullback and captain Roger Tuivasa-Sheck returns from a 1-game suspension, with Peter Hiku shifting to centre and Gerard Beale out. Chanel Harris-Tavita starts at 5'8" for Cody Nikorima, who has a head knock, with Jazz Tavanga back from injury on the bench. Carl Lawton has been named at lock, and Tohu Harris in the second row, in a swap from where they each played last week. That full Warriors team again at fullback, Tuivasa-Sheck, Fusi Tura, and Patrick Herbert, Peter Hiku, Ken Mamalo, Chanel Harris-Tavita, Blake Green, Jermaine Tonoa Brown, Wayne Egan, Adam Blair, Jack Murchie, Tohu Harris, and Carl Lawton. That's your 13 starters. In the interchange: Ignatius Pussy, Jack Hetherington, Asaya Papali, Jazz Tavanga, beg your pardon. The reserves are Lachlan Bird, Gerard Beale, King Vuni Yayawa, and Adam Pompey. That's your Warriors team for Friday night's clash against the Gold Coast Titans. And finally, suspended Manly prop Aidan Fornua Blake faces further disciplinary action after NRL acting CEO Andrew Adbo found that he had breached the game's anti-vilification code during separate outbursts on and off the field after Sunday's 14-12 loss to Newcastle. Fornua Blake is serving a 2-match ban for abusing referee Grant Atkins at full time, but the NRL is considering an additional sanction after it was revealed he made similar derogatory and offensive comments about the match officials in the Brookvale Oval dressing room. Far out. How did they find that out? Have they got microphones in there? What happened on Sunday was divisive and against the fabric of what we stand for as a game. Abdo said, there is no place for comments like that in our game. Sport is about bringing people and communities together, and we pride ourselves on being an inclusive game for everybody. Fornua Blake issued a written apology through the club on Sunday night at the urging of his wife. On Tuesday, the Sea Eagles released a video in which he admitted, "I let my emotions get the best of me." The Manly forward also confirmed he had continued his tirade in the dressing room, but insisted the comments hadn't been directly to Aikens or any other match official. Interesting when we're talking about players in a bit of trouble. Joey Leilua, who put in a high shot in his game against the Penrith Panthers, playing for the West Tigers, and it's an absolute shocker. A lot of ex-players saying that the sanctions that he's actually got, I think he got 4 weeks, but people and a lot of ex-players, commentators are saying those sanctions should be tougher. Absolutely lost his head. His brother during the game was also taken out, and obviously he didn't respond too well to it, but it's really all about discipline at the end of the day. Well, that's it for League News today. Look, listen out for the guys on the standoff this evening. That's Brad and Sanjay, 8 p.m. on New Zealand Sports Radio. And in terms of this, where I've been broadcasting from, it's been absolutely an absolute hoot and a pleasure to be here. But I move back to my venue of choice from tomorrow, which is my car.
It's a great studio.
Don't worry, folks. Sydney's just changing studios, but he's not changing stations. He'll still be here on New Zealand Sports Radio from tomorrow.
And he's not homeless and living out of a car. Let's also make that clear.
Make that very clear.
That's very, very true. Moving on then to basketball news and 2 results yesterday from the Sal's NBL. The Otago Nuggets went down 69-81 against the Auckland Huskies. You've got to say, shock result there. The Auckland Huskies, that's their second ever win in the NBL, being a new expansion franchise this season. And they did this despite their captain being suspended for this game. You might remember that he put his hand around someone's throat during the previous game. So he was missing for this one. So Haku, missed this one, but the team all rallied round and got the win over the Otago Nuggets, who now have slipped back after winning after having an opening run of, I think it was 3 games where they won. So yes, the Otago Nuggets really struggling. Now, in the second game last night, the Franklin Bulls, who were the new pace setters, having won 4 on the trot, were downed by the Taranaki Mountain Airs 88-102 in a high scoring affair there. It was Jones who led the Taranaki Mountain Airs with 29 points. He also led the game on rebounds as well with 9. He hit 12 from downtown. That's right, 12 3-pointers in this game. He was backed up by Raukua, who also hit 21 points. So big win there for the Taranaki Mountain Airs. That puts them at the top of the table with the Franklin Bulls, both of them on 4 wins now, closely followed by the Otago Nuggets, Nelson Giants, Manawatu Jets, and Canterbury Rams, all on 3 wins. And then the Auckland Huskies bring out the rear with 2 wins. This evening, the Manawatu Jets take on the Nelson Giants, and the Canterbury Rams take on the Franklin Bulls, having to back up after that loss from last night. Moving on then, and the government has announced details of $80 million to help with sports recovery. This is mainly aimed at grassroots sports, and 58 million of that will be distributed this financial year. 34 million is being matched by 34 million of existing money from Sports New Zealand for the 2 Manawa Active Aotearoa fund. But also national leagues are getting a boost from this as well. Basketball has received $300,000 for the men's league and $200,000 to get the Sal's NBL Women's League off the ground, which is obviously a big thing for them. But some funding is also for other national leagues, including bowls, hockey, rugby league as well. So funding for a number of national leagues to get themselves going yet again. Some of those important with obviously the Olympics coming up, and with hockey being one of those Olympic sports. There's also ice hockey has also received it as well, which received $70,000 towards its national leagues. Moving on over to the States, and we have the biggest ever deal in sports history with Super Bowl MVP Patrick Mahomes has signed a 10-year contract extension worth over $400 million, and that's US dollars, folks. So yes, an amazing contract that he has signed. So congratulations to him on that one. You've got to, I guess, wonder to a slight degree as to what are his chances of winning more Super Bowls. I remember that Tom Brady famously took a lower salary than he could have done, so that some of the salary cap could be used to make sure he had a good supporting team. And you got to say, after he was on 825,000 to jump to 40 million, boy, that's going to be a change in their salary cap and the distribution of their funds in that team. So going to be interesting to see how Kansas City go on from here. Moving on then to Formula One, and Fernando Alonso has announced he will be returning to Formula One in 2021 with Renault. He is expected. He understands that that's likely to be a midfield car, as the rules say that they'll be running the same cars this year as next year. But you got to say from 2022, he'll be hoping that gap narrows with the new regulations that are coming in. He is going to have a shot at winning the IndyCar 500 this year with McLaren. So he's still doing some other racing outside of F1, but looks like he's going to be. It looks like he's coming back next season. You have now started the day the best way, up to date with all of the important sports news. Don't forget, you can listen to us on the go. As you can see, that's exactly what Stephen Harris will be doing, as he's now quickly searching for New Zealand Sports Radio for his podcatcher there on his. Don't forget, you can listen to us on iHeartRadio, Spotify, iTunes, or Acast. Have a wonderful day, folks, and catch you all tomorrow at 7 a.m.